The first time I heard the bell, I thought it was part of the tour. A soft, silver sound. Not loud enough to be a temple bell. Not close enough to be a souvenir. Just a thin little chime drifting through the ruins after sunset, moving between broken brick walls and headless Buddha statues like it had been ringing there for centuries. I was standing inside Ayutthaya Historical Park in Thailand with a recorder in one hand, a flashlight in the other, and a strange feeling in my chest that I could not explain. The park had closed hours earlier. The tourists were gone. The vendors had packed up their water bottles, postcards, and elephant pants. The city had fallen quiet. And still, somewhere beyond the old temple columns, people were walking. Not one person. Not two. A whole line of them. I saw their shadows first. Long, thin shapes sliding across the red brick ruins. Then I saw the clothes. Golden sashes. Ayutthaya does not feel like a place that ended. It feels like a place that was interrupted. That is the best way I can describe it. When you walk through Ayutthaya Historical Park, you are not walking through one temple or one palace. You are walking through the remains of a city that used to be one of the most powerful capitals in Southeast Asia. Brick stupas rise out of the grass. Buddha statues sit in silent rows, some missing heads, some missing hands, some staring forward with faces worn soft by weather and time. Tree roots curl over old walls. Birds nest where royal halls once stood. And everywhere, there is that strange feeling that something grand was cut short. Ayutthaya was once the capital of the Siamese kingdom. It stood for centuries. Then, in 1767, after war with Burma, the city was destroyed. Temples burned. Palaces fell. People fled or died. The capital was abandoned and never rebuilt in the same place. Today, the ruins are beautiful. That is what every travel site will tell you. Beautiful. Historic. Photogenic. A must-see day trip from Bangkok. And all of that is true. But beauty can be dangerous when it makes you forget what you are standing on. Because Ayutthaya is not just ruins. It is a graveyard with no walls. It is a city full of doors that no longer lead anywhere. And according to some locals, if you stay too late, you may see the people who never left. I went to Ayutthaya for a story. That was how most of my bad decisions started back then. I had been traveling through Thailand, collecting audio for a documentary project about haunted historical places. Not the fake jump scare kind. I was interested in places where history and folklore tangled together so tightly that you could not always tell which one had come first. Ayutthaya was perfect. It had everything. A real historical tragedy. A real location people could visit. Centuries-old ruins. And stories from travelers who claimed they had seen figures in ancient clothing walking between the temples at dusk. Most people described the same thing. A line of shadows. Men and women dressed like they belonged to another century. Bare feet. Slow steps. No faces. And always, somewhere nearby, the sound of a bell. I heard the story first from a backpacker in Chiang Mai. He told it to me over cheap beer and bad noodles, laughing in that nervous way people laugh when they want you to think they are over something. He said he and his girlfriend had gone to Ayutthaya for sunset photos. They were near Wat Phra Si Sanfit when they saw 5 people walking across the ruins in traditional clothes. At first, he said, we thought it was some kind of cultural performance. But there was no staff, no lights, no music, no other audience. The figures walked behind a brick wall and never came out the other side. His girlfriend took a photo. When they checked it later, the figures were not there. But something else was. A small blur of gold near the bottom of the frame. Like a bell caught mid-swing. I thought it was a good story. Not true, probably. But good. 3 days later, I was on a train out of Bangkok with my backpack, recorder, camera, and a little brass charm in my pocket that had belonged to my father. The charm was shaped like a tiny bell. I had carried it for years. My dad used to keep it on his keychain. He told me he bought it from a street vendor in Thailand when he was young. He never said where exactly. After he died, I took it. I do not know why. Maybe grief makes you collect small objects because you cannot carry the person. The bell did not ring anymore. The clapper inside was missing. It was just a dull piece of brass, scratched and darkened with age. I had no reason to think about it when I arrived in Ayutthaya. No reason at all. That changed before sunset. I met Maya outside the train station. She was not what I expected from a local guide. She wore old sneakers, black jeans, and a loose white shirt rolled at the sleeves. Her hair was tied back with a pencil, and she carried a canvas bag full of notebooks instead of tourist brochures. When I told her I was recording stories about the park, she gave me the exact look I deserved. Half amused, half exhausted. "You came for ghosts," she said. "I came for history," I told her. She smiled. People always say that when they came for ghosts. Her English was excellent. She had studied archaeology in Bangkok and worked part-time guiding foreigners while helping a conservation team catalog fragments from several temple sites. "I am not a ghost guide," she said as we walked toward a tuk-tuk. "I do not say, 'Here is where the crying lady appears,' or 'Here is where tourists see a headless monk.' I can tell you what we know. I can tell you what we do not know." The rest is for your imagination. "That works," I said. "My imagination pays rent." She laughed. Our tuk-tuk driver was an older man named Somchai. He had a kind face, tired eyes, and the calm driving style of someone who had accepted that traffic laws were more like polite suggestions. He drove us past small restaurants, goose houses, convenience stores, laundry shops, and families on scooters. That was the first thing that surprised me. Ayutthaya was not some isolated ruin in the jungle. It was a living city wrapped around a dead one. People bought groceries beside ancient walls. Children played near temple gates. Monks crossed streets while tourists took selfies behind them. The past was not behind glass. It was right there, breathing in the same hot air as everybody else. Maya took me first to Wat Mahathat. Even if you have never heard the name, you have probably seen the image. A stone Buddha head caught inside the roots of a tree. The face calm. The roots thick and twisting around it like time itself decided to hold on. Tourists lined up to photograph it. Some whispered. Some smiled. Some crouched low because signs reminded visitors not to stand above the Buddha's head. Maya watched me take out my recorder. "Everyone starts here," she said. "Because of the Buddha head?" "Because it looks like a mystery that wants to be solved." "And is it?" She looked at the tree. "No. Some things are not puzzles. They are wounds." That sentence stayed with me. I asked her if she had ever seen anything strange in the park. She took a long moment before answering. "I have seen tourists behave strangely," she said. "That counts." "No," I said. "I mean the figures. People in old clothes." Her expression changed just slightly. Not fear. Not belief. Something more careful. "Many people see things at sunset," she said. "Long shadows. Deep. Imagination. A place like this makes the mind very active." "But you've heard the stories." "Yes. And stories are also part of history." That was all she would say. At least then. The first strange thing happened at Wat Ratchaburna. We had been walking for hours. The sun was low and heavy, turning the old bricks orange. Tour groups moved toward their buses. Vendors folded umbrellas. Dogs slept in the dust. Maya was explaining how restoration teams tried to preserve ruins without making them look new. I was only half listening. Not because she was boring. Because I had started hearing something. The faint sound. Metal on metal. One clear note. I stopped walking. Maya turned. "What? Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" The sound came again. A small bell. Soft. Close. I looked around. No one nearby had a bell. No monks. No vendors. No bicycles. Just the emptying ruin and the sound of evening insects. "It sounded like a chime," I said. Maya stared at me. Then her eyes dropped to my hand. I had reached into my pocket without noticing. My fingers were wrapped around my father's brass charm. I pulled it out. The tiny bell sat in my palm, dark and dead. Maya's face went still. "Where did you get that?" "My dad," I said. "Why?" "May I see?" I handed it to her. She turned it over carefully. Her thumb brushed the scratches along the side. For the first time all afternoon, she looked truly unsettled. "This is old," she said. "Souvenir old?" "No." The way she said it made my stomach tighten. "What kind of old?" "I do not know." But she did know something. I could see it. She handed the bell back too quickly. "We should go," she said. "The park is closing." "You recognize it?" "No." "Maya." She looked past me toward the ruins. For 1 second, I thought she was looking at someone. I turned. There was nobody there. When I looked back, she was already walking. That night, at my guest house, I recorded my notes. I still have the file. My voice sounds normal at first. Tired. Curious. A little excited. Then, near the end, there is a pause. 10 seconds of room tone. The ceiling fan. A scooter passing outside. A dog barking far away. Then the bell rings. Once. Inside my backpack. The guesthouse owner was a woman named Ploy. She was maybe in her late 60s with sharp eyes and a habit of knowing what you needed before you asked for it. Coffee appeared before I requested coffee. A map appeared before I asked directions. And the next morning, before I said a word about the bell, she asked me where I had found it. I looked up from my eggs. "What?" "The little bell," she said. I had not taken it out. It was in my pocket. I smiled, trying to keep it casual. "Maya told you?" Ploy's smile faded. "Who?" "My guide, Maya." The old woman looked toward the street. Then back at me. "There are many girls named Maya. She works with conservation teams," I said. "Archaeology student. Speaks great English." Ploy nodded slowly. "Ah." It was not an answer. It was the kind of sound people make when they decide not to say something. "Do you know her?" I asked. "I know her family." Something in her face closed. Then she poured more coffee. "In Ayutthaya," she said, "some people believe objects remember." Objects. Stone. Metal. Wood. Things people touched when they were very afraid. I felt the bell against my leg. "That sounds like a ghost story." "No," she said. "Ghosts are easier." I laughed a little. She did not. Then she leaned closer. "If you hear a bell after dark, do not follow it." That was the kind of warning every horror story gives you. And like every idiot in every horror story, I asked the wrong question. "Why?" Ploy looked at me with something like pity. "Because bells are not only for calling people in," she said. "Sometimes they call the dead out." I felt the bell against my leg. "That sounds like a ghost story." No, she said. Ghosts are easier. I laughed a little. She did not. Then she leaned closer. If you hear a bell after dark, do not follow it. That was the kind of warning every horror story gives you. And like every idiot in every horror story, I asked the wrong question. Why? Ploy looked at me with something like pity. Because bells are not only for calling people in, she said. Sometimes they call the dead out. I spent the day interviewing people. Most had nothing useful. A German couple said they had felt heavy energy near one of the temples, which could have been spiritual sensitivity or dehydration. A British tourist claimed his phone died at exactly 6:17 p.m., which sounded dramatic until I watched him use the same phone to film 3 straight minutes of himself feeding a stray dog. A Thai university student told me her aunt refused to visit Ayutthaya after sunset because she once saw a woman in old royal dress standing beside the road, soaking wet, although there was no rain. Then I met Daniel and Kelsey. They were from Oregon. Mid-30s. Married. Practical. The kind of people who labeled their packing cubes. They had visited Ayutthaya 2 years earlier and returned because, as Daniel put it, we needed to prove to ourselves we were being stupid. They agreed to talk if I did not use their last name. We sat at a cafe near the park. Kelsey did most of the talking. We were at what Frasi Sanfit, she said. Around sunset. We were taking photos. There was this line of people moving between the stupas. In costume, I asked. That's what we thought. Some kind of reenactment. But they weren't acting. They were just walking. How many? Maybe 12, Daniel said. Maybe more. It was hard to count. Men? Women? Both, Kelsey said. And one child. That detail made her voice tighten. A little boy. Maybe 6. He was holding onto a woman's sash. Daniel looked down at his coffee. They walked behind a wall, he said. We waited for them to come out. They didn't. Did you hear anything? They both looked at me. A bell, Kelsey said. My hand went cold around my cup. What kind of bell? Small, she said. Like something on an animal collar. Or jewelry. Did you take photos? Daniel pulled out his phone. I kept one. He showed me a picture of the ruins at sunset. It looked ordinary at first. Beautiful even. Red brick. Darkening sky. Long shadows. No people. Then he zoomed in near the lower left corner. There was a blur of gold. Just like the backpacker had said. A small oval shape. Hanging in the air. My heart kicked once in my chest. Can you send me that? I asked. Daniel nodded. Kelsey watched my face. You've heard it too, she said. I did not answer. That was answer enough. She reached across the table and touched my wrist. Then leave before night. Maya met me late that afternoon near the entrance to Wat Phra Si Sanfit. She looked tired. Not sleepy. Tired in the way people look when they have been arguing with themselves. I told her about Daniel and Kelsey. I told her about the bell in my backpack. I told her what Ploy had said. Maya listened without interrupting. When I finished, she looked toward the 3 great chadis rising over the ruins. My grandmother used to tell a story, she said. A ghost story? A city story. We walked slowly. Tourists moved around us in small groups, laughing, posing, checking maps. The normal world was still there, but it felt thinner than before. Maya said that after Ayutthaya fell, stories spread among survivors. Stories of people who had tried to flee through smoke and fire. Families separated in the chaos. Monks carrying sacred objects. Servants leading children through temple courtyards. Soldiers who could not find their officers. Courtiers who refused to abandon the palace. And one story about a bell. Not a large temple bell. A small handbell used inside the palace. According to the old tale, it was meant to gather people quietly during emergencies. A bell that could be carried through corridors. A bell that told those who heard it, follow. This way. Do not make a sound. On the last night, someone was supposed to ring it and lead a group of women and children toward the river. But the bell vanished. The people waited. No one came. By morning, there was no palace left to wait inside. Maya told the story simply, without drama. That made it worse. What happened to the bell? I asked. No one knows. And the procession? She glanced at me. Some families say those people still walk. Not every night. Not for everyone. Only when the city remembers. The city remembers. I thought of Ploy's words. Objects remember. I took the brass charm from my pocket. Maya did not step back, but I could tell she wanted to. My dad said he bought this from a street vendor, I said. Maybe he did. You think this is the bell from the story? I think stories attach themselves to things, she said. That does not mean every story is true. But you're scared of it. This time she did not deny it. Yes, she said, I am. Before I could ask why, a group of tourists passed between us. For a moment, Maya disappeared behind them. When they moved on, she was staring over my shoulder. Her face had gone pale. I turned. Near the far edge of the ruins, beyond a broken wall, stood a man. He was dressed in old clothing. Not a costume from a tourist shop. Not bright or theatrical. His clothes looked faded, heavy, real. He stood barefoot in the grass. His head was lowered. His hands were folded in front of him. I blinked. He was gone. No flesh. No movement. Just gone. My recorder was running. When I played it back later, at that exact moment I heard the bell. And beneath it, a whisper. A woman's voice. Not English. Not Thai that Maya recognized. Older, she said. Formal. Almost ceremonial. She translated only 3 words. He is late. I know what you are thinking. This is where a sensible person would leave. Book a hotel in Bangkok. Get on a plane. Throw the bell into a river. Never look back. I have thought the same thing many times. But fear and curiosity are not opposites. Sometimes they are the same rope pulling from different ends. I wanted to know what my father had carried. I wanted to know why strangers had heard the same bell. And I wanted to know why Maya looked like this story had been waiting for her too. She did not want to go back after dark. First. Then I asked her what had happened to her family. She stared at me so long I almost apologized. My older brother, she said finally, used to work near the park. She took a breath. He liked old stories. Too much. When I was 17, he went into the ruins after closing with 2 friends. They were making a video. His friends came out. He did not. I felt the air change between us. What happened? They found him near Wat Mahathat in the morning. I waited. He was alive, she said. But he never spoke again. What did he see? No one knows. Where is he now? With my mother, in Lopburi. She looked toward the ruins. Sometimes he rings a spoon against a glass. The same rhythm over and over. My grandmother said he was copying the bell. That was why she had taken the job. Not because she believed. Because she needed to stand near the thing that had taken part of her brother and call it history until it became less terrifying. Maya arranged a legal way for us to record near the park after hours. Not inside restricted temple interiors. Not climbing ruins. Not doing anything stupid. Just sound recording near approved areas with a conservation volunteer she knew. His name was Krit. He was younger than I expected, maybe 24, with a flashlight, a radio, and absolutely no interest in my ghost project. I am here so you do not fall into a hole, he said. Appreciated, I told him. He looked at my recorder. You hear ghosts, you tell them by ticket tomorrow. Maya smiled for the first time all evening. The plan was simple. We would record night ambience near Wat Mahathat and the open pathways nearby. 30 minutes. Maybe an hour. Then leave. No drama. No chasing shadows. No following bells. That was the plan. The bell started ringing at 10:43 p.m.
Night changes ruins. During the day, Ayutthaya belongs to cameras. At night, it belongs to shape. A broken wall becomes a crouching animal. A doorway becomes a mouth. A row of headless statues becomes a line of bodies waiting for orders. The air was warm, but I had goosebumps. Insects screamed in the grass. Somewhere far away, a dog barked once and went silent. I placed a small microphone on a low stone ledge. Maya stood a few feet away, arms folded. Crit leaned against a post, bored but alert. The bell in my pocket was wrapped in a cloth. It had not made a sound all day. Then it rang. Not from my pocket. From inside the ruins. One note. Clear. Maya closed her eyes. No, she whispered. Crit stood up straight. You hear that? I asked him. He nodded slowly. The bell rang again. Farther away this time. Or maybe deeper. Sound behaves strangely in old stone places. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Then we heard footsteps. Bare feet on dirt. Many of them. Slow. Synchronized. Crit lifted his flashlight. Maya grabbed his wrist. Do not, she said. What? Do not shine light in their faces. The sentence came out so quickly that I knew she had heard it before. Maybe from her grandmother. Maybe from her brother. Maybe from the part of her mind that had stopped pretending. The footsteps grew louder. A line of shadows appeared beyond the broken wall. At first they were only darker pieces of darkness. Then they became bodies. People. Walking. Men in wrapped cloth and old jackets. Women with hair pinned high. A child holding a woman's sash. My mouth went dry. Kelsey had said there was a child. I remember that thought clearly because it was so small and human compared to what was happening. The figures moved from left to right behind a row of ruined columns. They did not look at us. Not yet. Their faces were blurred, not like smoke, but like faces seen through water. The bell rang again. This time my pocket answered. A second chime. Crit swore in Thai. Maya turned to me. Give it to me. I pulled out the cloth. The brass bell was vibrating in my palm. It should have been impossible. There was no clapper. No moving piece. Just metal shaking like a living thing. The procession stopped. Every figure turned. I have never felt silence like that. Not quiet. Silence. As if even the insects had been ordered to kneel. The woman at the front stepped forward. She was not transparent. That was the worst part. She looked real. Dust on her feet. A tear in her sleeve. Soot along her cheek. She looked like someone who had walked out of a burning city and never reached the other side. She spoke. Maya made a sound beside me, almost a sob. What did she say? I whispered. Maya did not answer. The woman spoke again, louder. Maya looked at me. She says you kept them waiting. The bell burned cold in my hand. I didn't, I said. I don't know what this is. The woman's eyes moved to the bell. Then to my face. She said one more word. Maya backed away from me. What? I asked. But I already knew I did not want the answer. Maya swallowed. She called you by a name. What name? Maya's voice dropped. Nathaniel. I laughed once. A terrible, empty sound. My name isn't Nathaniel. The woman stepped closer. The figures behind her shifted. Not threatening. Waiting. That was worse. I looked at Maya. Tell her I don't know her. Maya spoke in Thai. The woman listened. Then she turned her head slightly, as if hearing something behind her. The child in the procession began to cry. No sound came out. His shoulders just shook. The woman reached back for him, but her hand passed through his arm like he was made of smoke. For the first time, her face changed. Not anger. Desperation. Maya looked at me, tears standing in her eyes. They cannot leave, she said. Why not? Because the bell never rang. My fingers closed around it. What do I do? Maya shook her head. I do not know. The woman lifted one hand and pointed. Not at me. Past me. Toward what Mahathat? Toward the tree. Toward the Buddha head held in roots. Krit whispered something that sounded like a prayer. The bell rang again. And then the figures began to walk. This time, they were coming toward us. We ran. I am not proud of that. I did not stand my ground like some brave documentary host with a camera light and a clever closing line. I ran like every cell in my body had voted unanimously for survival. Krit was fastest. Maya grabbed my sleeve and pulled me along a path between low walls. The bell was still in my fist. Every few steps, it rang. Each time it did, the footsteps behind us grew closer. Not running. Never running. Just walking with the certainty of things that had waited longer than fear could last. We reached a clearing near Wat Mahathat. The tree was ahead. Even in darkness, I recognized the shape of it. The roots. The Buddha head. The famous image from 1,000 postcards now looked less like a tourist attraction and more like a witness. Maya stopped so abruptly I almost crashed into her. A man stood in front of the tree. Not one of the ancient figures. This man wore modern clothes. A faded blue shirt. Dark pants. Sandals. He was thin. His hair was messy. His face was turned away. Maya made a sound that broke something in me. "Anan," she whispered. The man turned. His eyes were empty and calm. Not dead. Not alive either. Maya's brother. I knew it before she said anything. He looked exactly like someone who had walked too close to a story and left part of himself inside it. He lifted his hand. In it was a spoon. He tapped it against an invisible glass. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm of the bell. Maya took a step toward him. I caught her arm. "Maya." She pulled away. "That is my brother." "I know. He is here." "No," I said, though I had no idea what I meant. "Something is using him." Anan looked at me. For the first time, his face showed expression. Recognition. Then he pointed to the bell. The procession entered the clearing behind us. Crit backed toward a wall, shaking. The woman in the torn sleeve stepped forward and spoke again. This time I did not need Maya to translate. I understood. Not the words. The meaning. She was asking for the bell. I looked at the brass charm in my hand. My father's charm. My last small piece of him. A souvenir from a country he had visited before I was born. A thing I had carried through airports, apartments, relationships, funerals, and bad years. A thing I had touched whenever I missed him. And now a dead woman in a ruined city wanted it back. That should have made the choice hard. It did not. Because behind her, the child was still crying without sound. I stepped toward the tree. Maya grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" "Returning it." "To where?" "I don't know." The bell began to pull. That is the only way I can describe it. Not physically. It did not drag me. But my hand knew where to go.
I crouched near the roots around the Buddha head. There was a hollow space low in the tangle, hidden behind dry leaves and shadow. The bell rang softly. Once. Like relief. I placed it inside the hollow. The moment I let go, the air changed. Not warmer. Not colder. Lighter. The kind of change you feel when a storm moves away before the rain stops. The woman closed her eyes. The figures behind her bowed their heads. Anan lowered the spoon. For 1 second, he looked like a normal young man. Lost. Terrified. Trying to wake up, Maya ran to him. This time, when she touched him, he did not vanish. He collapsed into her arms. Alive. Breathing. Sobbing. The procession began to move. Past us. Past the tree. Past the Buddha head. They walked in silence toward the dark beyond the ruins. The woman was last. She stopped in front of me. Her face was clearer now. Older than I had thought. Not old in years. Old in grief. She touched 2 fingers to her forehead, then lowered them toward me. A gesture of thanks. Then she looked over my shoulder and smiled. Not at me. At someone behind me. I turned. For one impossible second, my father stood in the clearing. Not as he looked when he died. Not thin from illness. Not tired. He looked younger. Maybe 30. The age he might have been when he bought the bell. He wore a wrinkled white shirt and the crooked smile I had almost forgotten. Dad. He did not answer. He only nodded once. Then the bell rang from inside the roots. And he was gone. The official version is simple. A foreign visitor brought an antique object to a local guide. The object appeared old enough to require examination. A conservation volunteer was present. The item was later turned over to the appropriate authorities for study. No one talks about the procession. No one talks about Anan appearing near Wat Mahathat in the middle of the night after years of silence. No one talks about my father. That is how official versions work. They make the world small enough to survive. Anan recovered slowly. He did not remember everything. Or he said he did not. He remembered following a sound when he was younger. He remembered a woman crying. He remembered standing in a burning hallway, holding a child who kept asking where his mother had gone. Maya told me this 2 days later while we sat outside the guest house drinking coffee neither of us touched. Does he remember me? I asked. Yes. What does he say? She hesitated. He says you were there before. I did not like that. What does that mean? He does not know. Ploy came out with fruit and said nothing. But when she saw my face, she touched my shoulder. Some things do not end, she said. They wait for someone to close the door. I left Ayutthaya the next morning. I told myself the story was over. That was the lie I needed in order to get on the train. Back in the States, my apartment felt too bright, too clean, too far from anything old enough to haunt me. For a week, I did not touch the recordings. I told myself I was busy. Jet lag. Emails. Laundry. Normal life. But every night, I dreamed of bare feet on dirt. A child crying with no sound. A woman saying a name that was not mine. Nathaniel. When I finally opened the audio files, I expected noise. Wind. Insects. Maybe distorted voices my imagination could turn into whatever it wanted. But the recorder had captured everything. The bell. The footsteps. Crit swearing. Maya translating. My own breathing. And something else. A man's voice. Soft. Close to the microphone. Speaking English. At first I thought it was me. Then I heard the accent. Older. Not British exactly. Not American exactly either. Colonial sound, like something from a history lecture. The voice said, "I came too late." 5 seconds later, my father's voice said, "No, you brought it home." I stopped the playback. My hands were shaking so badly I knocked coffee across my desk. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the waveform on the screen. Then an email arrived from Maya. The subject line was, "You need to see this." There were 3 attachments. The first was a photograph of the bell after cleaning. The second was a close-up of an inscription along the rim. The third was a scan from an old document preserved in a local archive. Maya's message was short. "I am sorry. I did not want to tell you until I was sure." The inscription on the bell was not my father's name. It was not the name of a king. It was not even Thai, at least not entirely. It was a phonetic rendering of a foreign name. Nathaniel Reed. My last name is Reed. I opened the scanned document. It showed a hand-drawn record of foreigners who had lived near Ayutthaya before the fall. Traders. Interpreters. Mission workers. Men whose names had been bent by Thai scribes in time. One entry had been circled. Nathaniel Reed. A foreign assistant attached to a palace storehouse. Responsible for carrying a small signal bell during emergency evacuation. Missing after the burning of the city. Presumed dead. Below the text was a rough sketch. Not a portrait exactly. Just ink lines. A long face. Deep-set eyes. A narrow nose. A small scar through the left eyebrow. I have that scar. I got it when I was 9, falling off my bike in our driveway. In the sketch, Nathaniel Reed was holding the bell. The same bell my father had carried on his keychain. The same bell I had returned to the roots at Wat Mahathat. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. A family name. A similar face. A mark that only looked like a scar because old ink bleeds. Then I opened the final file Maya had attached. It was a photo taken by Daniel and Kelsey 2 years before I ever visited Thailand. The sunset picture. The empty ruins. The blur of gold. But Maya had enhanced the corner. There was more than the bell. There was a figure standing in shadow behind the wall. A man in old clothing. His face was turned slightly toward the camera. The image was grainy, imperfect, but clear enough. It was me, or something wearing my face, standing in Ayutthaya 2 years before I arrived, holding the bell, waiting. I have not gone back to Ayutthaya. Not yet. People ask me if I believe the ruins are haunted. I never know how to answer. Haunted makes it sound simple. Like a place is either full of ghosts or it is not. But Ayutthaya is older than that. Sadder than that. It is a place where history did not disappear. It stayed. In brick. In roots. In metal. In family names. In stories whispered by grandmothers and dismissed by people like me until we hear a bell ringing after dark. Some nights, when I am editing late, I still hear it. Not loud. Not even frightening anymore. Just one soft chime from somewhere behind me. When it happens, I do not turn around. I know better now. Because in Ayutthaya, bells are not only for calling people in. Sometimes they are for leading them home. And sometimes, if your family has been running from an old debt long enough, the dead learn your name before you do. If this story pulled you into the ruins of Ayutthaya, stay with Infinite Story Realm for more true place horror stories from real locations around the world. Like the video, subscribe, and keep listening. Some places do not stop speaking just because the lights go out.